weapons, what we said to the Europeans is simply, first of all, this is in your neck of the woods, this is in your back door. You guys have got to step up and take a bigger role in this thing. And if you care so much about this conflict, you should be willing to play a more direct and a more substantial way in funding this war yourself. I think the president, and I certainly think that America, we're done with the funding of the Ukraine war business. We want to bring about a peaceful settlement to this thing.
Señores, una vez más nos queda claro de que quien trabaja con Donald Trump, tarde o temprano termina traicionado y hundido por él. Esa es exactamente la lección que está aprendiendo en este momento J.D. Vance, el vicepresidente. Ya llegan los rumores de que al parecer solo piensa en las próximas elecciones presidenciales 2028. Y bueno, acaba de ser sacrificado por su propio jefe. Amigos, hoy vamos a analizar cómo Trump está utilizando su fracaso en la guerra de Ucrania para destrozar políticamente a J.D. Vance. Pero antes, recuerda, déjame tu like en esta transmisión. Hoy, señores, jueves 21 de agosto, nuestra última transmisión del día. Los invito a que se suscriban a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo, si es que no lo han hecho aún. Eso nos ayuda muchísimo a seguir sacando a la luz todo esto. Pues bueno, amigos, para arrancar, quiero mostrarles a quien lo ha resumido perfectamente de la mejor manera el día de ayer. Y ese es Lawrence O'Donnell. Escuchemos atentamente.
Before his meeting on Friday in Alaska with Vladimir Putin, which accomplished nothing other than distracting news media attention from Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump said this.
I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today.
There was no ceasefire on Friday, but Donald Trump still said that he was happy after his meeting with Vladimir Putin, which was widely declared a failure, even in some Trump-supporting media. And 72 hours after saying, I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today. Donald Trump said this today.
I don't think you need a ceasefire. I like the concept of a ceasefire for one reason, because you'd stop killing people immediately, as opposed to in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it takes. But we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight. I wish they could stop. I'd like them to stop. But strategically, that could be a disadvantage for one side or the other.
They have to fight. There's Donald Trump saying they have to fight. Donald Trump, who has given up even trying to get a ceasefire, after trying for less than a day to get a ceasefire, now says they have to fight. No, they don't. They were not fighting until Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, thereby winning Vladimir Putin the legal status of war criminal.
Y es que Donald Trump no tiene ningún interés real en la paz, ni en usar su poder de Estados Unidos para defender a algún aliado. Él solo actúa con fuerza cuando es contra medios de comunicación, cuando es contra universidades o incluso contra la gente común. Ah, no, pero cuando se trata de Vladimir Putin y de su guerra en Ucrania, Trump no hace nada. Y lo más triste es que tampoco su vicepresidente. De hecho, J.D. Vance llegó a decir lo siguiente, escuchen.
Weapons. What we said to the Europeans is simply, first of all, this is in your neck of the woods, this is in your back door. You guys have got to step up and take a bigger role in this thing. And if you care so much about this conflict, you should be willing to play a more direct and a more substantial way in funding this war yourself. I think the president, and I certainly think that America, we're done with the funding of the Ukraine war business. We want to bring about a peaceful settlement to this thing. We want to stop the killing. But Americans, I think, are sick of continuing to send their money, their tax dollars to this particular conflict. But if the Europeans want to step up and actually buy the weapons from American producers, we're okay with that, but we're not going to fund it ourselves anymore.
What about Israel?
Así es, señores, para J.D. Vance, la culpa de la guerra es solo de Europa, no de Putin, y que Europa debería resolverlo. Y a ver, ¿Trump qué hizo? ¿Lo apoyó? No. Lo arrojó debajo del autobús, porque ahora, amigos, oficialmente Donald Trump le ha asignado a J.D. Vance la tarea imposible de negociar un acuerdo de paz con Rusia y Ucrania. Lo escucharon bien. Donald Trump entregó a Vance un encargo que no puede ganar. Lo puso a coordinar junto con Marco Rubio los esfuerzos diplomáticos tras esta cumbre con Zelensky. Algo que fácilmente suena pues una responsabilidad enorme, ¿no? Pero amigos, lo que no ven es que se trata de veneno político para J.D. Vance. ¿Por qué, amigos? Porque no tiene salida. Si él fracasa, y es lo más probable, porque Putin no va a querer ceder en nada, quedará marcado como un incompetente sin experiencia en política exterior. Y digamos que, por algún milagro, consigue un acuerdo. Sería una contradicción total con lo que él mismo defendió públicamente, que Estados Unidos debía reducir su implicación en Ucrania. O sea que, pierda o gane, J.D. Vance va a quedar hundido. Donald Trump lo puso en una trampa política, de la cual ya no va a poder salir. Lo más irónico, ¿no?, es que J.D. Vance ni siquiera ha sido tan leal a Trump. No lo ha defendido hasta el momento en el caso de Jeffrey Epstein. No se ha quemado demasiado por él en otros escándalos. Y aún así, Donald Trump decidió arruinarle el futuro presidencial. Esto es lo que sucede, señores, cuando tu jefe es Donald Trump. Tarde o temprano, te usa como un escudo. Y luego, te descarta. Del mismo modo, lo ha resumido perfectamente Nicole Wallace. Escuchemos.
This afternoon, proof of an age-old principle that you can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot. You cannot fool all of the people all of the time. Donald Trump, take notes, because right now the American people are mad at you. Call it a reckoning if you want, not just for Trump, but for those lawmakers who've hitched their wagons to the MAGA movement. Tomorrow will make it 7 months since Trump's second term began. I know it feels like 11 years. His report card, though, is so bad, it's going to need a signature from a parent. Overall, according to Pew, his approval rating is in the dumps, with just 38% of all Americans on his side. That compares to 60% who disapprove of Donald Trump's performance as president. It's a near record low for him. On tariffs, which are the signature tool of his economic masterminding, he's 23 points underwater on tariffs. On foreign policy, amid the pomp and circumstance, amid a flurry of meetings with European leaders, Trump is 14 points underwater right now. And on his administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein controversy, largely ginned up by his own coalition and base of core supporters, Pew says just 25% of all Americans approve of how he's handling that. And it compares to 70% who do not approve of how Donald Trump is handling the Jeffrey Epstein files. Before you write any of that off as a small matter, go beyond the numbers. Look at what elected Republicans are hearing about the so-called Epstein files. This is from Wyoming. Wyoming is a state Donald Trump won by nearly 50 points a few months ago.
I don't know if that vote's going to come up on the floor, but what a lot of people don't realize is that is for the courts to decide.
So you're not going to give us an answer on
It is for the courts to decide. Those files are sealed. It is for the courts to decide whether the files can be released.
And they're declining
it is a separation of powers issue. It is for the courts to decide.
Grand jury transcripts aren't going to get released, right?
I can't.
There seems to be a lot of sentiment in the House, on the right and the left, to see what's in those Jeffrey Epstein files. Do you support the release of those files?
I support. It's up to the courts to decide. It is up to the courts to decide.
Thank you.
It's up to the courts to decide. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
It's cute when MAGA is for judges after they're against them and then for them again. That was Congresswoman Harriet Hageman. She replaced Liz Cheney, being called a sycophant by her own constituents. Here's more from her town hall.
We have to have mail-in ballots. My question to you was, how do you feel personally of stripping Americans of those foundational tools of mail-in ballots?
Tools?
Mail-in ballots.
Mail-in ballots are not foundational tools.
So you just said we have to protect it, but it's not foundational.
You're fully capable of exercising your right to vote without a mail-in ballot. You are absolutely fully capable of exercising your right to vote without a ballot.
Again, Wyoming is a state Trump won by almost 50 points. It is hard to find a non-Republican person in Wyoming. And that's how her town.
Más que obvio, ¿no? Trump no piensa en J.D. Vance ni en su futuro. Lo único que le importa es el mismo. Sus donaciones, su legado inventado, sus delirios con el premio Nobel y hasta sus discursos de querer irse al cielo. Si para mantener su circo en pie tiene que destruir a J.D. Vance en el proceso, lo va a hacer sin dudar. Y ese, amigos, para J.D. Vance podría ser fácilmente el golpe final. Ahora bien, amigos, otra cosa que pues al parecer Trump quiere destrozar, quiere hundir, quiere darle esa última estocada, es a su propio partido, los republicanos. Donald Trump está más desesperado que nunca. Vive literalmente en un estado de pánico total, con la espalda contra la pared, y cada vez que eso sucede, ¿qué es lo que hace? Bueno, pues corre a Truth Social, su red social favorita, agarra esos deditos y empieza a escribir en mayúscula, como si, pues bueno, pudiera cambiar la realidad a punta de berrinches. En esta ocasión lo hizo en un colapso de medianoche, donde no solo amenazó a su propio partido republicano, sino que prácticamente exigió acabar con el sistema político de Estados Unidos, tal y como lo conocemos. Así de grave, señores. Para poder entender este berrinche nocturno, tenemos que mirar una de las razones detrás de su colapso, y es esta humillación constante que no solo él, sino también su títere J.D. Vance vienen sufriendo.
The Trump administration's made-for-TV military occupation of the nation's capital had a featured event this afternoon. Vice President J.D. Vance, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Trump advisor Stephen Miller went to Union Station, D.C. to make a big show of visiting the troops. Lots of regular American citizens living in our free country were there too, and so there was some heckling. Are you gonna F a couch buddy is the sound of freedom. We have much more coming up on what is happening there in D.C., but for J.D. Vance, this wasn't just another bad day at work. The guy just got back from a vacation with his family in England. And we all know how tough it is to come back to work after vacation. I myself was just away with my family for the past 2 weeks, something I'm very lucky and grateful to have done. It's a privilege that I get to have vacation like that because Americans don't get enough vacation. I mean, very few Americans would say we get too much time off, except, of course, Donald Trump, who complained back on Juneteenth the U.S. has too many non-working holidays, adding the workers don't want it either. He posted that just before flying to his New Jersey golf resort for 3 days. But I saw this stat from Zatio when I was on my own vacation. I just couldn't believe it. J.D. Vance has been vice president for 7 months now. And in those 7 months, he's gone on 8 vacations. 8! His first one was 5 days after starting the job. Do you remember that? It was the Vance family ski vacation to the Sugar Bush Resort in Vermont. 5 days into the job. His motorcade was met with protesters. Many carried signs with local-themed insults like Vance skis and jeans. Some protesters even found him out on the slopes.
JD, how does it feel being Putin's puppet?
I mean, it is a little weird for the vice president to go on vacation less than 1 week into the job. But then he went again in March, the JD and Usha Vance Greenland vacation. That was going to be a family trip. Greenland, of course, the object of Trump's bizarre territorial obsessions. They had to plan an extended trip with the whole family, the kids. They ended up staying for just 3 hours at a U.S. Space Force base to avoid protests by Greenlanders.
Hey guys, how we doing? Please, at ease. At ease. Good Lord, sit down and eat. Sit down and eat. Don't let the vice president stop you guys from getting your chow here. How we doing? It's cold as here. Nobody told me.
Up next was the fabulous Vance family Italian vacation 1 month later in April. Now, for that, they shut down the Coliseum to thousands of ticketed visitors so Vance's family could have a private tour. Nice perk. Imagine saving for years for a trip to see the Coliseum and you can't because the vice president shut it down. He didn't even show for that tour, by the way, reportedly to avoid the, yes, you guessed it, numerous protesters. That's the same trip where Vance got a personal audience with Pope Francis and the Pope died the following.
Y es que amigos, es maldad pura, es enfermedad en la política. Y J.D. Vance, bueno pues, en teoría el representante versión 2.0 del trumpismo, servil, hipócrita y dispuesto a todo. Ahí es donde entra este delirio que Trump publicó. Gran victoria para Texas, camino a 5 escaños, en el Congreso. Si eliminábamos el voto por correo y volvemos al papel, se acabó el juego corrupto en la política. Ganaremos 100 escaños más. Dios bendiga a América. Señores, ¿se dan cuenta? Donald Trump no está hablando de propuestas. Está exigiendo acabar con el sistema electoral. Está amenazando a su propio partido. Está presionándolo para robar elecciones. Ahora bien, lo más irónico es que quien grita fraude a medianoche en su red social es el político más corrupto de toda la historia moderna. Y ojo, porque no se quedó ahí, porque en el mismo colapso también atacó pues, al gobernador de California, Gavin Newsom, mostrando que el nivel de paranoia es absoluto. Ya no es solo un berrinche, es una estrategia de poder. Donald Trump sabe muy bien que si no logra manipular las elecciones de medio término, jamás podrá robar la presidencia 2028. El objetivo es claro, llegar como dictador desde el día 1 y para eso necesita destruir cualquier límite que tenga en el Congreso. Y lógico, aquí es donde entra J.D. Vance, que es quien viaja por el país como un payaso político, intentando sostener a Trump, pero lo único que logra es ser ridiculizado. Lo vimos claramente cuando el senador Jon Ossoff lo destrozó antes de su visita a Georgia.
Well, there's a reason that they're scrambling to redraw maps in Texas ahead of the midterms is because there's a big Democratic wave forming because their agenda is so darn unpopular. I mean, you can't go just about anywhere in the country and sell an agenda that is defunding hospitals and nursing homes to cut taxes for the wealthiest people in the country. That bill is like 20 points underwater in Georgia, and the vice president is coming to do damage control because they realize that even in a purple state like Georgia, the public is opposed to what they're doing. I mean, we've lost 9 rural hospitals in 15 years in Georgia already. Just this week, it was reported that Evans Memorial Hospital in Georgia, small rural hospital, 49 beds, faces a $3+ million hole in their budget now next year. And the hospital is saying they might have to cut the ICU. This is exactly what we warned would happen when they passed a bill that guts America's healthcare system, cut taxes for the rich. So Vance is being sent on this little errand to come and play defense in Georgia, defending a bill they can't defend, trying to sell the unsellable. And let me just say this about J.D. Vance, because he was supposed to be this avatar of a new GOP that was for working class people in the United States. His legacy forever now is casting the decisive vote to throw millions of Americans off health care, throw seniors out of their nursing home beds, all to serve the wealthiest and most powerful people in the country. He has zero credibility as a champion for America's working class, and the damage control he's trying to do in Georgia this week is going to fall flat, and Georgians have already rejected this policy.
Senator, I want to stick in Evans County, Georgia, where you mentioned that rural hospital said that they're going to have to cut around $3.3 million from their annual budget. This is also after the hospital has had to cut their OBGYN services. Donald Trump won Evans by 70% of the vote last November. How do you, as the senator there, convince those folks who voted for Donald Trump in record numbers and said at 70% that this is not good for them, that this administration, in your estimation, is not good for them?
The good people of Evans County, Georgians, Republicans, Independents, Democrats know this is not good for our state. I mean, this policy is deeply unpopular in Georgia. That's why J.D. Vance is coming. You can rest assured I will be campaigning in Evans County and reminding those folks that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and their Republican representatives passed a bill willfully and knowingly that has deprived their hospital, their little hospital, they're an hour away from any other hospital, of millions of dollars in funding when we already have a healthcare crisis in the state of Georgia. That's why Vance is here, because they are in trouble in Georgia, and he's trying to rescue them from their own mistakes.
Well, speaking of their mistakes and things that are deeply unpopular, you can add to that list this president's approach to immigration and deportation. You recently released a report as part of your Senate investigation into credible findings of human rights abuses in U.S. immigration detention. Let's look at some of those numbers. 41 credible reports of physical and sexual abuse of individuals in U.S. immigration detention. 14 credible reports of mistreatment of pregnant women, 18 credible reports of mistreatment of children. When you put those numbers before your Republican colleagues, what defense do they have?
Well, it's indefensible. You know, the American people expect and deserve secure borders. They do not expect and support human rights abuses of people who are in U.S. custody. And we have gathered more than 500 credible reports of serious human rights abuses in these Homeland Security facilities. You know, there at some point is going to be a reckoning for all of this. These folks who are working at these private prison companies, who are on Kristi Noem's staff right now, they are at some point going to have to testify under oath about what is happening in the facilities that they're currently running. And, you know, their plan is to expand the scope of detention. By the way, we're not talking about hardened criminals here. We're talking about pregnant women. We're talking about...
Para mí ese contraste lo dice todo. Por un lado, J.D. Vance, un vendido total, dispuesto prácticamente a cualquier cosa por el poder y por los multimillonarios que lo financian, ¿no? Por el otro lado tenemos a líderes como Ossoff, que han construido una carrera denunciando la corrupción. Dos caras de una misma moneda que van a chocar. Primero en 2026 y bueno, quién sabe, ¿no? Quizás 2028. Lo importante es el presente, pero Trump está perdiendo el control, amigos, amenazando a su propio partido, presionándolo al límite, y su única salida es destruir la democracia desde adentro.